Assalamu alaikum. This is Sharup Mujumdar welcoming you all to the English news from BTV Chattogram. Let's begin with the headlines. This year's Hajj flights to begin after midnight as more than 87,000 pilgrims to travel to Saudi Arabia to perform Holy Hajj. International Crimes Tribunal grants additional one-month period for submitting investigation report on Ashulia body burning case. Gano Adhikar Parishad urges to prioritize national interest and country over individuals, parties and groups while meeting with the National Consensus Commission. U.S. forces bomb detention center holding African migrants in northern Sada of Yemen, killing at least 30 and wounding 50 more. And Zimbabwe bagged 227 runs for 9 against Bangladesh on day 1 of second and final test in Chattogram. Those were the headlines. Now moving on to the details. This year's Hajj flights will begin at 2:15 a.m. after midnight. A total of 87,100 Bangladeshis will travel to Mecca of Saudi Arabia to perform the Holy Hajj. Among them, 5,200 pilgrims will go under government management, while the remaining 81,900 will travel under private arrangements. The Hajj flight program will be officially inaugurated by the interim government's religious affairs advisor, AFM Khalid Hussain. The first flight is scheduled to leave Hazrat Shahjaal International Airport carrying 419 pilgrims on the first day. To ensure smooth Hajj management, 112 guides under government supervision and 1,743 guides under private management will assist the pilgrims. Additionally, 70 muallims will provide comprehensive support to the pilgrims. 3 airlines, including Biman Bangladesh Airlines, are prepared to transport the pilgrims. Hajj flights will continue till 31st of May, while the return flights will begin on the 10th of June and conclude on the 10th of July. Chief Advisor Professor Muhammad Yunus returned home in the early hours of today, wrapping up his Doha and Rome tours. A commercial flight carrying the Chief Advisor and his entourage landed at Hazrat Shahjaal International Airport at about 3 a.m. Earlier on Sunday, Chief Advisor Professor Yunus left Rome for home a day after joining the funeral mass of Pope Francis at St. Peter's Square in Vatican City. Wrapping up his 4-day Qatar tour on Friday, the Chief Advisor flew directly to Rome to pay his last respects to his old friend Pope Francis. On Saturday, he joined the funeral of Pope Francis at St. Peter's Basilica. Today, former IGP Chaudhry Abdullah Al-Mamun, former army officer Ziaullah Hassan and 11 others were produced before the International Crimes Tribunal in connection with 4 separate cases related to crimes against humanity, including the burning of 6 bodies in Ashulia and mass killings of students and civilians during last July-August. The other cases involve mass killings in Dhaka's Chhatrabari and Rampura areas, as well as in Norshingdi. During the hearing, the tribunal set July 20th as the next date for submitting the investigation report for the Chhatrabari and Rampura mass killing cases. Later, during a media briefing, prosecutor Muhammad Mizanul Islam informed the journalists that, in the interest of fair justice, the tribunal granted an additional 1-month period for submitting the investigation report on the Ashulia body burning case. He added that the tribunal has fixed 25th of May as the next date for submitting the investigation report for that case. Nurul Haq Nur, president of the Gano Adhikar Parishad, has urged the National Consensus Commission that the current government prioritize national interest and the country over individuals, parties and groups in matters of reform and that reforms agreed upon through consensus be implemented. He made these remarks in his opening statement during a dialogue with the National Consensus Commission held today at the LD Hall of the National Parliament. A 9-member delegation led by Noor participated in the dialogue. Noor said the reforms finalized through discussions should be implemented under the current government. Vice President of the National Consensus Commission, Dr. Ali Riyaz, said the Commission's goal is to create a national charter that will bring changes to the distribution of power and allow Bangladesh to awaken with all its potential. The dialogue was moderated by Special Assistant to the Chief Advisor, Monir Haider. Commission members Safarraz Hussain, Justice Emdadul Haq, Dr. Badiul Alam Majumdar and Dr. Iftikharuzaman were also present on the occasion. For the first time in the country's history, a cargo flight departed Silet's Osman International Airport for Spain carrying 60 tons of cargo, especially ready-made garments, last evening. The maiden flight was operated by Gullister Aviation with a chartered Airbus freighter. Initially, the cargo airline will operate 2 weekly flights from Sylhet Airport to Spain. The move is aimed at strengthening export logistics of the country following India's abrupt suspension of third-country transshipment earlier this month. Civil Aviation and Tourism Advisor Shaikh Bashiruddin attended the inaugural ceremony as the chief guest, while Bangladesh's ambassador to Mexico, Mushfiqul Fazl Ansari, and Civil Aviation and Tourism Secretary Nasreen Jahan and Biman Bangladesh Airlines Managing Director Dr. Shafiqur Rahman were present as special guests. Civil Aviation Authority Chairman Air Vice Marshal Manjur Kabir Bhuiya said they have planned to add other Airbuses in future. Businessmen said following the cancellation of transshipment through India, this government initiative will add a new dimension to cargo transport. Additionally, it will also reduce transportation costs, they added. Now, international news. Houthi-affiliated media said U.S. forces bombed a detention center holding African migrants in northern Sada in Yemen, killing at least 30 and wounding 50 more. Medics in Gaza said Israeli forces have killed 17 Palestinians in pre-dawn attacks a day after killing at least 53 people across the Strip. Meanwhile, the Wafa agency reported Israeli forces severely beat an elderly man in the Tulkaram refugee camp in the occupied West Bank after setting fire to his home. Besides, fears of famine are growing as Israel's total blockade on all food and aid into Gaza passes its 8th week. The International Court of Justice is set to begin a 5-day hearing on Israel's humanitarian obligations in the occupied Palestinian territory. At least 52,243 Palestinians have been confirmed killed and 117,639 wounded in Israel's attack on Gaza since it began 18 months ago. The Gaza government media office updated the death toll to more than 61,700. U.S. President Donald Trump said he thinks his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky is willing to give up Crimea to Russia as part of a peace deal, despite Kyiv's previous rejections of any such proposal. Trump also urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to stop shooting, sit down and sign a deal to end the fighting, suggesting this could be achieved within 2 weeks. He made the comments to the reporters after returning from the Vatican, where he held a brief meeting with Zelensky before Pope Francis's funeral. Trump said the meeting had gone well and that Crimea had been discussed very briefly. He also said Zelensky now seemed calmer in what could have been a reference to a very public clash between the two presidents at the White House in February. Ukraine repeatedly rejected making any territorial concessions, stressing that issues about land should only be discussed once a ceasefire is agreed. A 30-year-old man in Canada has been charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder after a car drove into a crowd at a street festival in Vancouver, killing at least 11 people, including a 5-year-old girl. Kai G. Adam Low appeared in court late on Sunday and was returned to custody, Vancouver Police Department said, adding that further charges are expected. Acting Police Chief Steve Ray described Saturday's attack at the Lapu Lapu Day Festival as the darkest day in the city's history. It was attended by up to 1 lakh people. The identities of those killed have not yet been released by officials, and police said dozens more were hurt in the attack, which is not being treated as terrorism. Police said the suspect was known to them prior to the attack that took place at around 2014 local time on Saturday at East 43rd Avenue and Fraser in the south of Vancouver. Organizers of the annual Lapu Lapu Festival said the city's tight-knit Filipino community was grieving and the attack's impact will be felt for years to come.